Welcome to the Energy Forum, where we explore the key issues shaping energy markets, policies, and innovations worldwide. I'm Ken Medlock, Senior Director of the Baker Institute Center for Energy Studies. Today's episode takes us to the Middle East, a region central to the global energy landscape. This is part one of a two-part series featuring Jim Krane, the Diana Tamari Sabag Fellow in Middle East Energy Studies, Osamah Alsayegh, a non-resident fellow at the Baker Institute Center for Energy Studies, and Salem Alhajraf, a visiting research scholar at the Baker Institute Center for Energy Studies. Together, they delve into topics ranging from the energy transition and OPEC's oil strategy to international climate agreements and the effects of heavily subsidized electricity in Kuwait. Jim, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Ken. It's great to catch up with two fabulous colleagues and some of the smartest Gulf energy scholars out there. We want to highlight our forthcoming paper on Kuwait government subsidies on electricity and showing how they distort demand. That paper should actually be out simultaneously with this podcast. But before we do that, we want to just sort of, have a quick discussion on the energy transition in the Middle East, this part of the world, especially the Gulf, the 6 Gulf countries, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Kuwait, Qatar, Oman, and Bahrain. They're all known for oil and gas, obviously, right? Like other countries in the region as well. But these guys are also building out a lot of renewable power generation, especially lately. And they're investing in economic diversification, right? The Saudi Vision 2030 goals, et cetera. Really lots of investment in economic diversification in some of these countries. I think some of this we can agree is being done due to climate action, around the world, slow oil demand, and nobody knows where that's going. But these countries also, most of them have their own domestic net zero goals. Wanted to start with you, Salem, and to ask, how do you see the energy transition unfolding in the Middle East, and which countries are leading the way in renewables, and what kind of strategies are they employing?
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Jim, for having us. In fact, for the Middle East, we should understand they are categorizing in two types of countries, hydrocarbon exporters and hydrocarbon importers. For hydrocarbon exporters, in fact, entering into the energy transition toward clean energy technologies, it's a matter of going forward to improve our intention to go to net zero emission targets by 2050 and 2060. And also, there is a lot of diversification opportunities. Since 50s or 60s, when GCC countries start developing as a result of the robust hydrocarbon revenues, they were talking about diversification, but none of them yet successfully done. So for GCC as oil exporter, having energy transition strategies, it is an opportunity to diversify part of the local economies. For the other category of Middle East countries, they are looking for energy transition and deploying renewable energy as part of their energy resources diversification and also energy security. So we can be categorized into two main parts.
Then on the renewables investments, that's one of the things that we've been cataloging here at the Institute. A lot of progress in the UAE on renewables and nuclear, of course. They've got 5.6 gigawatts of nuclear now. I think the UAE is getting something like 30% of its electricity now from clean sources, so leading the way really in the region. And Saudi's about I think a couple of gigawatts of renewable capacity now, mostly solar. I think they're getting somewhere around 1 to 2% of their power from renewables, but that's going up really quickly. They're investing massively. Osamah, what's going on elsewhere on the energy transition? I mean, Kuwait had some pretty big plans. You wanted to chime in on this?
Yeah, definitely. Kuwait does have actually ambitious plan on renewables. Has been announced. Actually, Salem announced this earlier this year as being a minister that Kuwait will have a capacity of its generation capacity in Kuwait, 50% renewables by 2050. They do have actually all these plans, not Kuwait, of course, as United Arab Emirates is the leader actually, not only in the Gulf, but in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, and the Maghreb, the western part of the Middle East, that they're also actually have ambitious plan on that. However, we do see, I don't want to say sluggish, but they're slow in their pace, and definitely because of a number of reasons. Probably number one is financing, and number two, it's at the end of the day the security of their energy system in general. But definitely, we're expecting to see in the long term more renewables going to be in within the energy mix, not only in the Gulf but the Middle East and North Africa.
What about just sort of overall reliance on hydrocarbons in the economy? Is this something that the Gulf countries and leadership in these countries is worried about?
In fact, it is one of the key obstacles for the economic restructuring of the countries. The over-reliance on hydrocarbons for local consumption and also for export and generating revenues are the key obstacle facing most of the strategies being announced. We can see some countries moving forward to diversify national economies. Example, of course, UAE, as Osamah said, and recently also Saudi Arabia. In fact, Saudi Arabia, they are moving very firmly toward the energy mix by targeting 50% renewable by 2030. So far, they are building about 15 projects, a total of 30 gigawatt of installed capacity at different construction stages from development to operation. Also, as Osamah said, UAE is another good example in the region where they can diversify using the energy transition strategies. Of course, other examples, as Osamah said, Morocco, Egypt, Oman, Qatar, and Jordan, they already have large-scale renewable energy power plants already participating in the fulfilling the national demand on electricity.
Yeah, I think Israel's got 7 gigawatts of renewables capacity now. A lot. They've got a lot as well. One other thing I should mention in this vein is hydrogen. There's been a lot of emphasis on hydrogen lately. A lot of exuberance at first, and then some. A bit of maybe a reality check. Some of the NOCs in the region were unable to get offtake agreements in spite of trying pretty hard, especially in Japan, right? There's been some testing of using clean hydrogen or actually clean ammonia, co-firing it in coal-fired power plants in Japan and China and in South Korea. And I think the countries in the region want to supply that. But Oman also, we haven't mentioned Oman yet, and Oman's got a pretty interesting model for hydrogen development, offering actual land concessions, almost like that we're used to seeing for upstream oil exploration and production, but they're allowing companies to use that land for 50 years to generate hydrogen, basically use the solar radiation or the wind resource to generate hydrogen. We're seeing that bit of success there. So some of the installation of renewables now in the GCC is not for power generation for the grid, but actually for making green hydrogen. Same thing in the northwestern corner of Saudi Arabia around Neom, largest single-phase hydrogen project in the world, or green hydrogen project in the world. So, Osamah, I wanted to turn to you and ask, does the energy transition, these things we're talking about, does that play a factor in governments and state-owned companies going down the route of actually selling off a stake in their national oil companies or national infrastructure?
Actually, yes, we've been hearing the news. Aramco, for example, the Saudi Aramco, the United Arab Emirates ADNOC, the Bahraini Babco. As a matter of fact, I was a couple of weeks back, even KBC, the CEO, Nawaf Sabah, mentioned there's a possibility of selling some piping sector in this. And actually, It's the whole thing is actually maximizing the value of their existing assets by selling these stakes of these mature energy infrastructure. Actually, it allows the Gulf states to lock into long-term value, reducing the future risk of global energy market transition. So basically, this is in a way of diversifying their economy. And again, an example for the Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates, as they're pursuing their plans, for example, the Saudi vision of 2030, they're monetizing their energy infrastructure. So they're freeing up cash to invest in other sectors, such as technologies, transition, financing, while maintaining and controlling over the core strategic of their assets. So basically, they're meeting their fiscal needs. So basically, the revenues they receive from the oil, selling oil, they're actually fueling their budgets and actually relieving the pressure on themselves. So monetizing their assets allow these countries to generate capital without increasing their public fund. Again, and making their assets internationally owned in a way to sustain their sustainability and relieving actually the international environment requirements pressure by selling these stakes in hydrocarbon infrastructure. So allowing the Gulf states to be exposed to fossil fuel while signaling commitment to sustainability at the same time, because basically they're also integrating clean energies within their sectors. So again, just to sum up, their stake selling in these infrastructure, basically, as I said, they're allowing it to have more cash to diversify their economy. They're having their assets in a way, not 100%, but in a way to be stable, demanded for. So that's a strategy. It seems to me so far this is attractive, at least for Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates, Bahrain in a way, and Kuwait is signaling in moving into this direction too.
Interesting. Yeah, so I guess you can't do this forever, right? There's a limit to the number of oil sector assets you can sell off, right? So it's a process that does, I wouldn't expect to see this to go on for forever. One of the things that just maybe a quick comment, diversifying away or beyond, I should say, oil in that region and developing new economic sectors. Of course, this is something that the World Bank and the IMF have been banging on about for decades. Finally, getting serious now because of climate. But the rates of return of these diversified businesses are probably not going to be what these countries are used to in terms of getting high rent take from exporting oil. I mean, if you can produce oil like the Saudis can for roughly $10 a barrel, you can sell it for 70 or 80 or whatever. You're probably not going to get those sorts of returns in these diversified businesses. Is that something that gives policymakers pause in the region, Salem?
Yeah, of course, there is short-term challenges to diversify away from hydrocarbon. Of course, when we say diversifying away from hydrocarbon, definitely we are not going to reach zero dependency on hydrocarbon because it is a natural resource underground in our region, so we have to utilize it. But to what extent is 30% dependency on hydrocarbon as an ultimate goal is feasible or more or less? This is something no one knew yet. As you said, once we reach a stabilized and sustained economy with enough revenues from hydrocarbon and from others that we are aiming to diversify, then we can reach the equilibrium or sustainable long term. But on the short term, definitely it will be a tough strategy. We have to create economic sectors, some of them from scratch. Some of them need to be redefined. As Osamah said, selling part of national assets from national or state-owned companies, this will generate a robust revenue or robust cash to finance these projects. And also it will enhance the transparency. usually questioned by international markets about state-owned companies. So selling part of these national companies will also encourage transparency and also participation of other stakeholders other than official decision makers on the policy making.
So there's a pretty good example of a very diversified economy in the Gulf. Dubai likes to tout itself as the Dubai model, where the oil's basically been depleted. I think they hit peak production at about 400,000 barrels a day, pretty modest amount, in 1991, a long time ago. And they've been reducing their the role of oil in their economy since then. So a long time. They like to call themselves, the first successful post-oil economy in the Middle East. Do you think Dubai, either of you guys, maybe starting with Osamah, is Dubai is it really a model for the rest of the region? I mean, are other, governments, or citizens, the publics, are they comfortable with, trying the Dubai model on at home?
Well, again, this is from my own opinion. One Dubai in the region is enough. The region cannot take more than one Dubai. It is too late for any country to become like Dubai. So that's why the Gulf, especially the Gulf region, should really look into a strategy of really integrating kind of strategy. Again, the Gulf considered to be a unified like the European Union, ASEAN, or any bloc that can and be integrated together. You cannot be jack of all trades. So leave Dubai as is and basically let's the rest of the Gulf countries focus on other things. And again, work together as to be integrated as one bloc. Each would take its own role. But definitely, I can see logistics, financial institutions that, all countries are considering. And they, again, they can be integrated in general.
If I may add, I think Dubai and Bahrain, they are more or less the most successful economies in the GCC. They are not heavily dependent on hydrocarbon because they don't have that much of hydrocarbon available in the other countries. So as Osamah said, the Dubai model, it was created because the lack of the hydrocarbon, similarly Bahrain. And it cannot be repeated by other. Each country in the GCC, it has its own advantages and restrictions. So they build their own strategy, diversification strategy, based on the current status of each country.
I mean, I think it'd be a pretty tough sell to say, hey, let's bring in so many expatriates to form businesses and drive the economy, to the point where they're 95% of the population, right? So Dubai, in Dubai, citizens are only 5% of the population. I don't think there's that many countries, governments, populations that would be comfortable with that amount of migration. Of
course, if there is opportunities to create jobs, it will be directed for the nationals because we have, in each country, they have an issue of creating jobs for highly educated young generations. So definitely, part of the strategy not to create jobs for expatriates, to create jobs for locals.
So in some sense, I mean, sometimes I think of it this way: the Dubai model is almost a warning of what the post-oil age could bring. If you that's one route, right? So you could find another way of diversifying your economy by bringing in lots of foreign investment, but also lots of expatriate residents. And I think maintaining the oil side of your economy allows you not to have to go down that road, right? So maybe it's a little bit of a warning to the rest of the Gulf.
The Energy Forum is brought to you by the Center for Energy Studies at the Baker Institute for Public Policy at Rice University. This episode was produced by Maram Hijazi. AV production was led by Kevin Young. Be sure to visit us at bakerinstitute.org/center-energy-studies to learn more. Thanks for listening.